Welcome to the REEL-Craven County Schools new podcast to be able to communicate information to all of our families and our students and our staff to be able to share some of the greatest things that are happening across our district. Welcome, Nardi.
Good evening, I think. It's an evening afternoon.
You're like, what time is it?
I know, what time of day is it? It's great to be here.
Well, thank you. This is episode 2, and we are excited to jump right into action. One of the things that we constantly hear all the time is, can our students read? And so as you are our Southeast Regional Teacher of the Year and also represent Craven County Schools as our Teacher of the Year, please tell me that our students can read.
Our students can read. Every time they're getting better. They read more complex text. So yes, our students can read.
And obviously, it's one of the skills that is extremely important for life. And so we want them to be able to master the foundations of reading.
Yes.
And we do that through multiple platforms and resources. But one of the most successful that we have found, not only are our exceptional teachers, because obviously we've got to have our teachers or this wouldn't happen at all.
Yes.
But also a resource that we have is a program called LEXIA. So tell us about LEXIA, because I know sometimes people hear it and they're like, what is that?
Yes. So LEXIA Core 5 is in the elementary schools, and it's basically giving the students opportunity to practice those foundational skills. And it also, as they move up, it also gives them opportunity to practice some comprehension skills. So when they start the school year, we assess them. They get on there, because what I love about this program, it puts them where the student needs to be. So you have students who are on level 10. Even though that's low, that's where they need to be. And then you have some students who start off level 14, level 15, and I believe it goes in elementary up to level 21. And once they get to 21, they're done. They're finished with it for that particular year. So I definitely love that. They spend about 20 minutes a day. Each person has a different goal. So it depends on what level they are. So I have some students who have a goal of 80 minutes, and I believe it's 16 units, and then down to 40 minutes. And then I have some who are at grade level or above, and they just have a check. I still give them a requirement for goals. But about 20 minutes a day.
So that's good. It's goal oriented. So when you say that they have 80 minutes, you don't mean 80 minutes per day.
Oh, no. It's for the week. 80 minutes for the entire week.
Because sometimes one of the myths that we hear is that we just hand students iPads and that they're on their iPads all day long from the time that they walk into school to the time that they end. So is that true?
No, it is not. I've heard the same thing, and no, it's not. I can speak for my class. I can speak for my grade level. I can even speak for my school that I know. I believe our students are more paper pencil, more hands-on. Do my students go on iPads? Yes. All day long? No. But they not only do they do the LEXIA on Core 5, but they also do some other stuff. Like I have math escape rooms on iPads, but it's fun. It's not like sit there doing games and stuff like that.
It's not a sit and get.
No, not at all.
Because nothing is ever going to replace a phenomenal teacher.
Exactly.
Yes. So one of the things that I love is that when I go out into the schools, like last week, for example, I was at Oaks Road Academy. They had a career day and invited me to talk about my job. So having kindergarten to second grade students, that's the time frame that I was there for, learn about communications and public relations is really fun, because you basically start at the basics. But one of the things we talked about was telling the story. So that's primarily what we do with public relations and communications, and all of the great things that are happening within our schools. So I use the example of them with their LEXIA goals, because it's something that they could relate to. And you want to talk about excitement.
Yes.
And so each group that came through as they rotated, they're like, well, I'm on level. And so they, were bragging about where they were and they wanted me to know what level they were on. So tell me about the celebrations that you do, because I love that it's goal oriented and that we celebrate their achievements.
Yes. So school-wide, at our school at Creekside, so every Monday, our assistant principal, Kim Scott, on the morning announcement, she has the names of students who met their who leveled up. And the kids are like, they love seeing their name come across the screen, and then they get a bracelet. And their goal is to see how many bracelets they can get.
Oh, that's so
because
fun.
every time they level up, they get a bracelet.
Yeah.
So now in my classroom, they have these punch cards. And so if they meet their goal for the week, I punch their card. And so I think it was last week or the week before, I had so many students who had cards. So I give them like popsicles or something.
Yeah.
And they're like, nowadays, like, I met my goal. It's like, okay, I need to check. I need to check. But now we have to be careful because it's not just minutes, it's the units. So I believe it's like every 5 minutes they should get at least 1 unit. So if they are sitting there with 50 minutes and 2 units, I need to figure out what's going on, because you should have...
They're spending too much time.
They're spending too much time, not either are they clicking through. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch you do this unit or this span of time. And usually it's like, I just want to get done. I want to get the minutes. I said, nope, I'm not looking at just the minutes. I'm looking at the units as well.
So are the units passages?
They're not just passages. It's an can't talk. An activity that they have to answer questions, and then there's this little ring on the bottom, and it starts building light, and that means they're understanding and they're getting the concept.
Comprehension.
And yes, and so then they earn that unit.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And so when you say this is school-wide, so all of our elementary students have the opportunity to participate.
Oh, yes.
And so it's K through 5.
Yes.
And I know that there's a middle school component as well.
Yes. Power up.
Power up.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's
Yes.
exciting.
Yes.
So when you say that they've mastered and they've completed, then do they do independent reading? Is there something that's in replace of for when other students are doing their LEXIA?
Yeah. Are you talking about the one who's finished?
Yeah.
Yes. I have 5 kids who are finished.
Oh,
It's like,
that's so great.
So
Out
they
of how
love,
many students?
Out of 23.
Okay.
Out of 23. I have one more who's almost finished, and so that'll be 6.
That's excellent.
So they love to read, and they'll ask, "Can I just find a place on the floor and read?" I said, go for it.
Right.
Sometimes I give them challenging work to do, especially in math. So when the others are doing their LEXIA time, usually it's like between right before our reading block or right after our MTSS block, we have a good 20 minutes. Okay, do LEXIA. So the ones who are finished, I'll give them like a challenging activity in math, or I give them something in reading, but usually they just want to grab their book and read. That's all they want to do. They do. They love just to lay on the floor and read.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yes.
I always loved reading as a
Yes.
child, so I'm glad to see that is instilled in others as well.
Yes. Yes.
So now tell me when I totally was going to say, tell me about when they master their concept, but I was going to ask about the 5 or 6 who are done. Do you see a correlation with their results on the EOGs?
Oh, yes. Just recently they took the, what do they call it? The check-ins.
Yeah.
And all of my students who finished LEXIA, they just shot up. When I compare the check-in, the B to C, they just soared.
And I know that sometimes people get frustrated because they think that we are test driven. And we are not test driven. Now, do we make data driven decisions? Absolutely.
And that's different.
That
though.
is a huge difference.
Yes.
So could you give an example of when your grade level, because you're the grade level chair, when you guys meet and when you look at data, what you're looking at, and not necessarily the results of the test that's important?
Right. So when we look at data, I'm trying to use one for example, we give common assessments, and we did one, what comes to mind is on text structure. And it's something that we created on SchoolNet. And it's after several weeks of working on text structure. And so we look at it and said, okay, I don't understand what, your scores are here, yours are higher than mine by 10 points. What did you do differently? Tell me how you taught text structure, things like that. And then what's funny is like, then you watch them on Core 5 and guess what? Some of them are on. Their
Right.
unit is on text structure. So, and then you notice their scores are getting a little bit higher because they're getting that extra practice on Core 5. Does that make sense?
Yes, because practice. Reading is one of those
Yes.
skills.
And the thing is, they may get it reading this text, but then they read a different text, maybe something that they're not interested in,
Yes.
and maybe a little bit more complex text. And then it's like, well, you got it on this one. And that's another thing we look at data. Well, let's look at this passage. Let's read the passages. It's like, well, they don't understand anything about this topic or this
Right.
content. They don't have the background knowledge. So there's a lot to take into consideration when you're looking at scores on any type of common assessment, because then you have to, especially with reading, because then you have to look at the passage. Do they really not understand text structure, or is it a text that they're not interested in? They couldn't pay any bit of attention to it
Sure.
when they're reading.
Yeah.
So all that stuff we have to talk about and consider.
And that's, I think, really hard, because when you're trying to read something that doesn't mean anything to you or doesn't matter, it's really hard, I think, to comprehend and understand.
Yes. And I tell my students that all the time. I said, guys, there's a lot of times I have to read stuff for, education. And if I don't understand it, I'm going to have to go back and read it like 2 or 3 times.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. And I want them to do that. That's what I'm trying to get them to do.
That's good. And
Yeah.
practice makes perfect.
Yes.
So with summer approaching, and I know that our parents are always looking for ways in which that they can be able to help their child, especially when it comes to reading. What are some recommendations that you would give so that they don't experience that summer slide? Because I know sometimes parents like to give their student the summer off.
Yes.
And sometimes when they come back to school, we see where they've gone back a little bit. And so what are some suggestions or recommendations you have?
Okay, so I have and I'll send it home with my parents or with my students at the end of the year. I have them just pick a book that's on their level, and by the time they know, especially series, and I can tell them get into this series of books or get into this series of books, and get a one of those composition notebooks and journal. And just write like who, what, when, where, why, how. They have a bookmark that says thinking codes. And it's like, okay, this part is interesting. So put a star, and sticky notes just to constantly think while they are reading. So basically reading and writing about what they read. And that's what I have my parents have their students do.
Yeah. And the
Yes.
library is a great resource. I love our library downtown, and I know that there's other available for any of our families. And then there's also some electronic digital books that are available too for
Yes.
checkout, I
Yes.
understand.
Yes.
So that's good.
Yes.
And then the Pick 5, I was telling you that I
Yes.
saw that when I was at Vanceboro Farm Life, and that I love that too, because it's making them think, is this book good for me? And I know when my children were growing up, my daughter always wanted to read books that were harder for her. And that probably wasn't where she needed to be, but it was exciting for her because I think that she was thinking she was getting a bigger book.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm sure you see that sometimes too.
I do. Yeah. I tell my, I'm not sure if this is the Pick 5 that you're talking about, but I teach my kids, like, read a page, just pick a page from a book. And if there are, I believe it's like 5 words you can't say, that's too hard. So you want one, like, if you can read every word on the page, it's too easy.
Right.
So you have to be somewhere
Find
in
the
the
balance.
middle. Yeah. So I tell them, it's like, if you can find a book where on one page there's maybe 2 or 3 words you don't know, then that's a just fit book. So I'm sure there's other ways to pick a
Yeah.
book, but that's what I usually tell them to do.
Good. Well, we
Yes.
hope we see the reading achievements at the end of the year from all of the hard work that's been invested, not only by our students, but our teachers as well.
Yes.
And we know that this summer is coming, and that our families will probably want their students to continue on that journey of learning.
Yes.
So to continue, just have them pick up a book.
Yes. And it's so easy.
Yes. Well, good. Well, thank you for sharing about LEXIA.
Oh, you are welcome.
We look forward to learning more about all the things that are happening in Craven County Schools.